Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Joshua Bridwell Show. Super excited to be here. And like usual, I have another incredible guest with me. We have the one, the only, the amazing Natalie Rupp. Hey, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about you?
Hey, thank you. You really talked me up there, Joshua. It is nice to meet all of you. I'm Natalie, and I'm excited to be on this show. So when Josh asked me, I was like, absolutely. I'm excited to have this discussion with all of you, and I hope that it's fruitful. I hope that everybody can gain a lot out of it. I know that I am a real estate coach, but I think this content is applicable to a lot of other listeners, even if they're not in real estate. So I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. How did you get into real estate coaching?
Yeah, it was a journey. So I wasn't from Indiana. I was working up there, and then I applied for a job at, I don't know if you guys know this, Ramsey Solutions. Do you know that? Do you know Ramsey Solutions, Joshua?
I do. I'm
Okay.
actually a financial coach, master trainee from or through Ramsey Solutions myself. So I've
Oh,
got quite a
great.
few connections over there.
Perfect. Yeah, it's a great place to work. So I worked there for a couple years, and I was given a role with real estate agents, and it really just launched me forward into coaching over 500 real estate agents across the country. And I fell in love with the industry and the people that I was working with. And it's an industry that I think is a little thankless. So I used it as a mission just to really dive into all my people and love on them well and encourage them in their business. And then give them little tidbits of encouragement along the way of how I can help grow their business. So I started, yeah, that's how I started.
That's awesome. So you were saying that it's a thankless industry. Do you mean they're not often thanked for all the hard work that they do behind the
Yeah,
scenes?
Yeah, I think so. So I think just talking to real estate agents all day long, every day, they're really beating themselves down. And it's a constant discussion on how do I switch your mindset forward? And I heard it a lot of I don't feel valued in my profession. And I feel like I'm, doing my day to day and just kind of blowing in the wind wherever it takes me so that I can um, go to do what my clients want with not a lot of value of thank you for that.
Mhm.
And so that kind of put some boundaries on my coaching of how do I make sure that they feel supported by me because it is any entrepreneur feels lonely. It's a lonely business. And that's what real estate agents are. And so when you're able just to come alongside of them and show them their strengths and then be able to tweak some of the things on the side, they feel more encouraged at the end of the day, knowing I'm not alone. And then when somebody's telling them what you're doing is worth it, I think they get a lot of value from that.
Yeah, I think that you just hit a really important point of what it means to be a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And that is to come alongside, that is to encourage.
That's right.
It's not to just stand up there and point them and say, do this, do this, do this,
That's right.
right? It's bringing out the value within them that's there. And
Mm-hmm.
so let's dive a little bit deeper into the foundations of real estate itself.
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
those that are listening, I do have real estate investing experience. I'm in the process of getting my real estate license. And so I'm pretty familiar with a lot of the industry norms, industry standards. And I also know that a lot of real estate investors, real estate agents, they'll go to seminar after seminar, they'll sit in a crowd, they'll pay for this training, they'll do anything that they really can in order to find the one magic fix that's going to take their business from point A to point B.
Yes.
And I think that in looking for this magic bean to get them where they want to go, they ignore a lot of fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
They ignore a lot of the foundations that make a healthy real estate business. So, to you, in your experience, what would you say are the foundations of a healthy real estate business?
Mm-hmm. That's a meaty question because I think it can go in so many different directions. Um, on the side of production, there are a lot of foundational things that requires something at the root of it, who everybody is. And you need that consistent, like extreme consistent discipline is what I like to say. Because if you don't have that, then we can't even move forward to the rest of what production looks like. Um, Real estate agents, I think, have been spoiled recently with COVID. I think they're able just to get a house on the market and it sells really easily and quickly. And a lot of people joined real estate because they were like, these houses are selling like hotcakes. I can get in this industry. And they have a quick win under their belt, and then they don't even learn what it's like to win and actually grind and have that consistency. And you talk to any single agent who's been in the market or just an agent for years, they're going to say consistency is the main thing that's going to help you win. And I think your question is, okay, then what? If somebody is disciplined, I mean, it goes into you have to have somebody along the way holding you accountable to hit your goals daily. How many appointments do you want to set? How many conversations do you need to have? Those are two important conversations I have with agents, because some people are like, I don't know, maybe one conversation a day. I'm like, oh, you need way more than that. You should be talking to at least 20 people and you should be setting 10 appointments, like shoot higher. And so I think those are some of the foundations. And I think somebody with a coachable spirit who can be teachable to learn is also a core of winning in the business. Because when you just start, you need to know who are the best, who can I watch, and how can I be trained well in order to set myself up for success. So I would say another foundation is having those mentors in your industry, not even just real estate, but I think just in general, you need to have those mentors you look up to that are going to pour back into you, that are actually in your industry, doing it day by day, where you get to see, okay, what are you doing that's winning and how can I emulate that? How can I copy that? Rip off and duplicate is my theme of my coaching. It's like, we don't have to start from just ground zero. How can we do what other people are doing and it's already working well?
Yeah, learning from other people's successes and learning from other people's failures is something that's really important. Being coachable, and that's not something that a lot of people think is a foundation, but it absolutely is. Now, there is a danger of being coachable.
Yes.
And the danger of being coachable, please be coachable. I'm not saying don't be. But you have to be careful what you listen to. Because sure, you can take advice too soon at the wrong time, or you can just take the wrong advice and it's going to be really unhealthy. And so while you're being coachable, listen to those that have been where you want to go. Don't listen to somebody who has no experience doing it. You're wanting to make sure that you're getting high quality advice. That's how you can really turn being coachable into a superpower. And we talked about, learning from other people's successes and failures. And I want the listeners to be able to hear from yours a little bit. Why don't you dive in a little bit to some of your big successes as a real estate coach? And why don't you dive into a couple of your failures that others can learn from?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I have a couple things that jump out right away. I think being able to coach agents on the production side, of being able to take a new lead source, because I was coaching in the lead source business of, I'm sending you leads. I want to make sure that you're converting them at a really high level. So I have a different perspective of real estate coaching in that, because I was actually sending them people I wanted them to win with. But right there, I mean, every single real estate agent, if they don't have some sort of SOI, sphere of influence, coming into real estate, they're going to have to grind with lead sources and people that are sending them business. And right there, I was able, after months of really focusing on it, learning how do I take agents from not converting at all to converting at a 10% rate. And I was able to find what that is and how it happens and coach to it really specifically. And I think that was a massive win, not only because the agents are getting money and they're winning in their business, but it was a win because we got to work as a team. And I think consulting and coaching are two different things. I feel like consulting, I'm at a Consulting is I'm going to sit at the opposite side of the table and tell you exactly what to do,
Hmm.
which is what you were talking about at the very beginning. Whereas a coach, we get to sit on the same side of the table and I get to approach every conversation with how can we win together and collectively? That way they feel supported and then they're going to take your advice and run with it even faster. So that 10% conversion rate was massive, unlocking and knowing, I mean, relational marketing tips. You have speed tips. You have all these different things that you can pull out of your hat that agents are, it's almost like their eyes are uncovered to a whole different dynamic of real estate that they've never even considered before, which is rewarding for me just to show them there's more options than just what they're currently doing.
Great.
Failures. Don't we all have a lot of failures?
They're the most
That's
important
how we
part.
learn. I know. Yeah, I would say, I think the biggest thing for me was when I know what works, I like to speak to the problem and I jump right to solution and solving mode instead of letting them get there first. Um, People are more apt to do what you say when they figure it out themselves.
Mhm.
So I think I prescribed a lot of issues at the very beginning of my coaching experience. Like, oh, you said this is why it's not working. So I think a spirit of curiosity was some skill I had to sharpen in my own way of coaching is how do I become more curious so that I can actually solve the problem. And usually I heard this one said, it's in a book, Listening the Forgotten Skill. Um, but it's the smoke screen. People say an issue and you think that's the issue and you solve it, but that's not actually what's happening. So that was a big learning experience for me.
That's something that I wrestled with for a long time, and I didn't know that I had that issue until it was pointed out to me. That
Yeah.
I saw an analogy the other day that pointed it out perfectly, where, we live in an age where people will go to the doctor and then they'll leave with some medication almost every time that they go into the doctor. But if you go in, it said, if you have a doctor that doesn't ask, how's your sleep? How's your diet? How's your exercise? Then you have a drug dealer.
Mm,
Being able to ask the intentional questions to get to the actual root to
mm,
then address is something that our society as a whole lacks. And we
mm.
don't realize it until we take a look at what it means to be a coach. We want to
Yeah.
we want to be somebody that is knowledgeable, that's wise, and we want to be right. And so we hear a problem, solution. And I think that we're taught that, at least people of my generation, we're taught, hey, if you got a problem, figure it out. But we're not taught, okay, you have a problem. All right, let's take a look at it. Let's ask questions. Okay, then let's solve it.
You know, that's really good. It actually led to another thing that I'm like, oh, I failed at this too. But when you finally uncover the issue and you're like, oh, it's more than one. There's actually a lot here.
Mhm.
And then you solve and you give them a bunch of to-dos. They're overwhelmed. They don't know where to start. And I think that was something I learned of how do you pick the one issue, or not the issue, I think that's a little extreme, but the one thing that needs to be tweaked for the biggest impact first. That way they have a win under their belt and then they can go from there. It's kind of like if you're going to the gym and you have a trainer too. I mean, you had the doctor example, but somebody's deadlift position could be completely wrong. And you're like, I'm not going to tweak their shoulders, their heels, their lumbar. You're not going to do all that. You're going to like, what is the biggest thing that's going to make sure that they're safe? And it's making sure that their spine is in line, right? So it's
Yeah.
the exact same thing in business coaching. But that was a hard thing because I just want them to win and be like, you got to do this, this, this. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, so what do you do to typically get to the root? You've got somebody, they've got a smoke screen problem.
Mm.
What are you doing to get to the root? What kinds of questions are you asking?
Yeah. Have you heard of the pain funnel?
I have not.
It helps isolate the true objection. This is when somebody says no to you, but I like to think of that sales aspect in coaching. How long have you been feeling that way? How long has that been an issue? What have you done to try to solve it? And you're just like going and working down and is like, has there been anything else you tried? Are you up for something new? And so you're able to kind of just navigate and get more information out when you're like, what have you tried? So I'm not solving something that they've already tried, solving for something that they've tried, right? And I think that method has really worked. If you look it up online, it's just called the pain funnel. I had it on my desk printed out for a very long time just to remind myself we have to start really high and you have to ask more questions. Um, and that will get to that objection or whatever that root issue is.
That's really good. The art of asking questions is something that I encourage everybody to learn, not just for business, but being able to better connect with your husband, your wife, your
Right.
kids, your best friends, being able to ask intentional questions and be able to listen without anticipating a response is going to do a lot for you.
Yeah. And I would say real estate agents listening to this, that's hard for agents to do. Um, because their time is their most valuable asset and they're running fast. And I think the agents I coached had a hard time slowing down and getting really personal and asking questions and getting to the root of why are they moving? What's actually going on in your life? And those important, I mean, it might seem like it takes time, but those are the things that's going to be your referrals in the future because they love you. They just shared information about themselves that they've not shared with anybody in a really long time. And that was actually something that I was talking about. We touched on this in the beginning, but the foundations of real estate, it's also having that curious spirit of a counselor, being a therapist, because you're walking through people's lives that, man, you don't know what's going on the other side. And if you just jump straight into business, they're going to get that transactional language and they're going to be kind of turned off by it. And so that's something else that I coach on is how do you do relational coach or like a relational transaction instead of it being so money focused? People are going to sniff that out pretty quick.
Yeah, you beat me there because I was going to lean into the okay, well, what's the balance here between it being genuine
Hmm.
versus transactional?
Yeah.
Um, and people will know the difference. You know, be able to take the sales hat off and realize that at the end of the day, it's a human. You're helping other people, and caring for them is going to do more for them than this transaction will,
Hmm. Yeah, that's
or
really
has the
good.
potential to, rather.
Yes, for sure.
So there are people within my circle that are interested in getting into real estate. They've seen what I've done and how I talk about it, and they just are really on fire about stepping into this industry.
Hmm.
If you could just time travel, if you could go back and start a brand new real estate company, what are the first things that you're doing? And I don't mean, forming LLC and legal documentation and logo. What are you doing that's actionable to take your business from a point A to a point B?
Mm. Yeah, great question. Um, I would become a student first. And I know some people are like, that's not what I want to hear because I want to make money fast. But if you're going to enter into an industry that is, I mean, it is hard work and it is a grind and it's not meant for everybody, you have to become a student of who in the area can take you under their wing so that you can understand what their day to day looks like. And I would be starting there. You have to slow down in order to speed up. And I'd be taking notes of how do you have personal boundaries at the end of the day? How do you make sure that this doesn't take over your entire lifestyle? Um, how do you make sure that you're doing everything that you need to? How are you managing your business well? Who's coming alongside of you? Like all these questions I would be asking in order to just make sure that it's a fit. And I would even do that before getting a license. And then I think to your question after that, when you're like, I know what it takes, I would start working your sphere of influence really fast. I would be diving in, telling everybody just like, hey, this is something that I'm going to be doing. And it is who you know. It's not what you know. And so when you're able to network and get connected on LinkedIn, that's going to be able, I mean, it's a waiting game, but
Mhm.
eventually those clients are going to come. And I would say I would start too on the expired list of listings. I'd be working through that list because not every agent's going to be consistent on working through the listings that were pulled from the market because the time frame didn't work out for them and their agent. And then you were able just to come in and blow their socks off because their agent obviously didn't do something or something's not working. And you get to have that spirit of, let me help you. And you're going to be on fire because it's your first one. You're going to give it all that you got.
Mhm.
So just get one under your belt, work from that list first, get a quick win if you can. And if not, I would be looking at Zillow. I'd looking at realtor.com. Ramsey was a great lead source as well. That way you can start, it's an investment, upfront cost, but eventually you just need one to close. That way it can cover all of the initial ROI.
That's great. And that's, yeah, that's good stuff. I want to dive back. You said using your network, and I
Mhm.
understand what you mean, but let's unpack that a little bit.
Yep.
What do you mean by your circle of influence within your network?
Yeah. So I would go a couple different routes. I mean, if we're thinking of first time home buyers, people are not, they're younger than 40 at this point because they're growing families. So most people under 40 are going to be on Instagram and LinkedIn if they're professionals. So I would be running to those two platforms and I would be following people. I would be sending video chats because the day and age of real estate is video content. And so if you're a young real estate agent, you are already outrunning the older agents that have had a hard time adapting to this technology. So I'd be running towards the platforms where video is already a comfortable space for you and for others to receive. I'd be sending videos, and then on LinkedIn, I would be doing the exact same thing. Like who in your network are in a certain demographic in your area. You can target it in. You can even see who your connections are with other people, and then really just hone in and doing video content and saying, "Hey, I'm your real estate agent. I'm Natalie that you can trust." And then going into that, I think that would be a great starting point. I don't necessarily think you need to go, you know, to the lengths of hosting an event for networking, but
So
I think it's right at our fingertips.
do you encourage using social media for both outbound marketing and inbound marketing?
1000%. The amount of people that are using video content that I coached, it is insane the amount of conversations they have more than the people that are not doing video. So I would be using your social media, correct, for both inbound and outbound marketing.
Gotcha. So, I mean, I do know people that are interested in doing things like that. I don't know if you were able to watch a previous show that I did with Michael Lewis. He's a real estate investor. He's done a lot of different marketing throughout the years. He's done postcards. He's done pay-per-click. He's done all sorts of different things. He's really wanting to do more on social media. And so when people are interested in leaning into that, so let's say that there's a brand new real estate agent, they're wanting to do video on social media. Would you encourage them to go watch stuff that other people are doing, or are you walk me through where they can find beginner tips in order to be effective in this video social media marketing?
Yeah. Hmm. I would look at your agents in the area that are successful, get on their website and put in a lead form. That way you can see their email content and that's coming to you automatically. Um, I would even, I mean, I would contact somebody like a coach or something that can give you tips of this is how it sounds, this is what works really well. Or if you have an agent that you know of that is just insane at this, I would be contacting them and sitting down and having a conversation. I think part of me wants to say, if you're wanting to get into it, start with what you know, because your voice is going to be louder than if you just say what other people are saying, because everybody's going to say it. You're not going to stick out at all.
Mm-hmm.
So part of me also wants to say, your first video is going to suck, and then you're going to iterate on it, and you're going to be like, oh, okay, this makes more sense. Having also some other voices coming into your funnel through Instagram marketing, email marketing, and so forth. Did that answer your question?
It did. You have to be comfortable with taking the first step and being willing to fall flat on your face. That's an important part of learning. I mean, from early childhood development, we learn to walk, but the very first time that we stand on our feet, we don't always take our first step. You eat the ground. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have to be willing to fail forward, learn, grow, try different things, adapt, and cross test. Hey, this works for these people, this works for these people, this doesn't work. Just get creative. And also, whenever you're making any video content, it's really important to just let some of your personality through. We talked about the being genuine versus being transactional, and people do know the difference.
Mm.
So people are going to more readily connect with the people that are genuine. It's how we're wired. And also, for a lot of people, buying their first home or selling a home that they've lived in for 35 years, this might be the largest transaction they ever make in their life. And
Right.
I don't necessarily just mean that financially, but I mean their heart's in it. It could be the house where they raised their kids, or it could be a family's first home that they're wanting to start a family. You never know, but always being genuine, being able to connect, have that heart to heart connection rather than a head to head connection is something that should really come through.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that's the transfer of trust, right? Like I talk about that too. That's why real estate agents say I can't just have 20 conversations. I have to have 10 meetings because there's something about that connection. It could be in person, it could be on Zoom, or even just them seeing your face. It naturally sets you apart from any other agent contacting you through just their email drip that they have or a texting drip that they have. So I absolutely agree is that your transfer of trust is going to happen faster when you're able to show your personality through even just the language of how you text too. And on Zoom. And this is something I get passionate about. You didn't ask for this, but maybe this is extra bonus content here, but I hate, this drives me up a wall, is when agents say some of their first questions they ask is, are you pre-approved yet? I'm like, no, you are already setting yourself up wrong. I had one agent that I coached, and gosh, so many different sides, so many sides in a year. And he was saying that every single time somebody came through, he was like, I'm going to sit down and have a conversation with you before I even know if you're pre-approved or not. And he was able to coach them, and people that had horrible credit scores, he got their business 3 years from now, and the food on his table was from them because he took the time and met with them in person. And I'm not saying that isn't a solution to everybody, or everybody can't do that for scalability purposes, but you have to instill that even in your team. If you have a team, of how do you facilitate almost an environment that's so welcoming or hospitable that they want to work with you in the future, because you didn't just get to the money side of things right away. So that's something I'm very, very passionate about.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell them that's important. They planted a seed and then they were able to, you know, gather that later down the road. And people think that oh, well, if I work for this big company, this big brand, then automatically I'm going to be receiving these clients. They're going to be coming in. And number one, that's just poor business thought. But also, you're it's going to be competitive. You're going to have to be able to connect. And so
Hmm.
learning life skills is going to be something that's really important. And I would honestly say that a lack of being able to connect on a heart-to-heart level is a big barrier to getting into real estate. But as a coach, what would you say are some of the big barriers to getting into real estate today?
Hmm. I touched on this a little bit before. Um, I do think, unfortunately, the market being easy in the past, in quotes. I mean, like I said, a lot of houses were selling very quickly. I
Mhm.
think that's a barrier is that people come in thinking it's going to be easy. Um, and that is just not the case. And then I think people hear so many success stories of real estate, and it's just um, a big industry that they think that they can win at, and they aren't cut out for it. To be completely frank with you, I mean, that I think the mindset shift, and then when people keep getting no's and they have to work really hard, I think people our age, unfortunately, don't know how to work hard either. And that's across the industry and beyond. There are just people that just really don't know how to sit down and make 100 calls a week. Um, and I think that's where coaches come in because 95, I love this stat, 95% of people that have an accountability meeting will be more likely to succeed in the task. So if you think about people running off on their own without that extreme consistent discipline, then they're not able to do their work. But when you have a coach alongside of you, you're able to do it. Um, so I would say the biggest thing is mindset. Um, and then getting a lot of no's. People think that they're failures pretty quick. Um, or if one thing goes wrong, or if one person doesn't like you, because real estate agents are very much like, how can I win? How can I have them like me? You know, it's just
Mhm.
like fed by this ego, which works. You have to be charming in the industry, but when they get that one comment, they'll hang on to it for a really long time.
Yeah. It- It's it's important for people to recognize that real estate's not for everybody. And being able to navigate these barriers in a healthy way will determine whether or not you make it or break it. You have to be able to get through the no's to get to the yeses. That's not just real estate. That's any sales that you're going to be a part of. It's any
Yeah.
relationship that you want to be a part of. It's a part of compromise. Get comfortable with the word no, both coming to you and out of you. The word no is a complete sentence. And
Mhm.
the more comfortable you are with that, the farther you're going to go, whether that's real estate, whether that is physical health, whether that's mental health, relational health, whatever that looks like, that's really important. And it can also be really frustrating when you're trying to coach them, you're giving them all of the information that you have,
Mhm.
but they're just not getting it. And you're not sure exactly what piece is disconnecting, but how do you coach somebody who's just not understanding? You may have explained it two or three, four times.
Yeah.
How do you tweak your approach?
What I'm hearing in your question is also the people that are also hesitant to do what I'm saying. Um, because of some reason. And I think there are a couple approaches I would be taking coming from that spirit of curiosity. Um, I would be like, is it just me or are we missing each other of what we're discussing right now? And just let them talk. I think it's okay to be, I mean, I read a book, it was called Fierce Conversations. And it talks about that. It's like, hey, this is something that I feel like is happening right now. Is that happening or not? And then I would get to the really big point of what are you afraid of? Like, what is it that you're so afraid of that you're not able to do X, Y, and Z? Or is this not important to you? That'd be another big question. Um, because apparently they don't see value in what we are discussing. So therefore, I would be really wanting to know what is important to you then. Do we need to pivot? Is this going against something you believe in? Like there has to be some root if they're not getting it. Um, so I would probably take probably a more direct approach. I wouldn't just let that slide. I wouldn't leave a coaching meeting with no action. I'd want to make sure that we got to some point of action so we can move you forward and staying stagnant.
Now, I feel that you answered more so on the lines of, okay, how would you address somebody who understands what it is that you're talking about, but is refusing to do it?
Right.
And so I want to unpack a little bit about they're there, they want to do it, they want to understand, but they're just not understanding what you're saying. That could be a difference in learning style. How are you coaching
Mhm.
these people that want to understand, but they're just not comprehending what you're trying to coach them to do?
Yeah. I think visuals are really important in coaching. So, for instance, let's take like the video that we were talking about earlier.
Mhm.
A lot of people are like, "Yeah, I'm on board. I just don't know where to begin because that is a massive elephant and I don't know where to take a bite first." And I think that it's really helpful if I was able to show them, "Hey, this is what it looks like. Is this something that you feel like you could do this week?" I think is a little bit more of an approach where just rip off and duplicate this, just this one thing. And even after this visual, if they're still like, I don't get it, then I have to pull up somebody else's website that I know is bomb, that it has it there. Or, okay, let's script and role play right now. What would you tell me if you were on camera right now and I'm a new lead? Give it to me. And real estate agents are really good at role playing. That's just a part of their business.
Mhm.
And so if I'm able to get a couple reps in with them, then they're like, oh, this is a little bit easier than I thought. Oh, this isn't what I was expecting. Okay, now this. It's just getting them to actually do it on the call with me is helpful.
Yeah, I like what you said about the role playing. I ask when I'm sitting across from somebody, they're just not understanding what it is that I'm getting at. One tool that I love to use is okay, I explained it to you, you explain it to me. Because that identifies to me which piece they're not understanding, and in the grand scheme of things, what does that affect? Not only because I want them to understand the little pieces, but also is the one piece that they're not understanding, does it go to the same outcome? Because if it can lead to the same outcome in their brain, okay, they think differently than I am. They have a different set of experiences than I do. This might be effective for them. Let's let them go try it. And if that doesn't work, okay, let's come back. Let's reassess this one little piece. Let's tweak it. That way we can get to the outcome that I know that piece will produce. And I really think that it's important to listen. It's important to have the visuals. It's important to be able to tweak your coaching style to the individual that you're working with. There are auditory, there are kinesthetic, there are visual learners, and being able to modify your coaching ability to hit each and every one of those, I think is going to make a fantastic coaching experience, especially whenever you do have that heart to heart that we've been talking so much about. And we've talked a little bit about using social media for outbound marketing, inbound marketing, going into your inner network for prospecting. But how else, if any way, would you go about prospecting? And also, how do you qualify your prospects? At what point do they become an official lead?
Yeah. Um, I would say an official lead by definition is when they come to you and you even haven't had a conversation yet. I would define once you have a conversation with them, they're an active client. Because the mindset is if you keep them in the lead status in your mind, you're not going to treat them with the excellence that you would if it was a hot lead. I hear a lot of agents talking about categorizing their leads, whether it be ABC, um, hot or cold leads. I mean, people have different methods for what they want to define as a ready and able buyer. To me, I'm like, if a lead came through your social media or any sort of lead source, they took initiative to say, I'm somewhat interested. We just need to figure out why. So they're a client. Like once you have a conversation with them, um, and then you can put them in the appropriate category of frequency, right? After the fact. I think that we talked about social media, we talked about sphere of influence, lead generation. Like I really feel like we've talked about the big ones, but I mean, I think another one is a CRM lead. Some people have CRMs that can automatically feed them business as well, and utilizing their MLS. So I think there are ways to cultivate more relationships and have business coming in than just the few that we talked about. But I would say leaning into the ones that we talked about today are the most important and probably the most valuable, I would say. Yeah.
So, quick side note, if anybody needs a real estate CRM, let me know. I actually build real estate CRMs. And so
Nice.
I can lean in and help there. It's not my full-time job, but I do love to help people in real estate get ahead.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to close out with my favorite question that I ask all of my guests. I love to read. And so I would love to know which three books have been the most transformational in your life.
Other than the Bible, but that would obviously be number one. But I would say, especially just coaching agents, I read the book Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Lawrence. Have you read that book
I
by
have. It's
Spencer
been
Johnson?
years, but yes,
Oh, it is fantastic. Who knew that a little book about mice would make me cry? And I was just so convicted on it because in this day and age, there's so many new things coming in and filling our time and our thoughts and our energy. And what's made it so powerful to me was I can't just stay and do the same thing that works. Like if one thing works, I can't just stay there. I have to iterate and say, okay, but how can it be better? Or hey, this is working for others. I have to move and go and do that. Um, and so being adaptable in business is one of the traits that I think we don't talk about enough. And this book was just transformational in the way that I conceptualize even just my business and go about it. So I love that book. I would say The Ideal Team Player by Pat Lencioni. Have you read that one?
mm-mm.
Oh, it's so great. I think it's important for two reasons for me personally. I'm able to see who do I want in a client and who do I want to be for somebody. And he talks about the ideal team player being humble, hungry, and smart. And these are three different principles and behaviors that you want to look for when you're either hiring somebody or you're going to be working with somebody. And since I do work with teams in real estate, I'm very passionate on how do we make sure somebody's in the right seat so that you don't spend all this time and then all of a sudden they're up and leaving because one bad hire costs around 18 grand. So I'm like, how do you hire the right person? So that book was awesome. And then I would say the last one is actually Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus by Nabeel Qureshi. This is more on the personal spiritual side for me, but
Tell us about it.
I love learning about different people's perspective. I love culture. I love diversity. I love just hearing somebody else knowing and finding Jesus. And so he was a devout Muslim, and the Lord just spoke to him in a whole different way, a radical way that I didn't even think was possible. And he was able to share that testimony and come to find out, like going to Indonesia and living with Muslim families and all the things that set the foundation for my understanding of how God works with people across the world in different ways of how they need to be spoken to. And so that book, I mean, it has set a passion for Muslims in my life. This is something I didn't think I'd ever talk on a real estate podcast about, but the book, yeah, it was transformational, even just for the people's stories around me of how does God speak to you? Because it's different than how he's probably speaking to me.
And he is speaking. He's speaking all
Mm-hmm.
the time.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Thanks
we
for
just
asking that question. That's fun.
yeah, we just have to slow down and listen. And that can
Yeah.
be a hard thing to do, but
Mhm.
it's an important thing to do. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for all of your time here today, and all of your wisdom, your insight, your ability to coach people with heart. Do you have any final thoughts before we?
Yeah, I would say if you are an agent out there and you're just feeling stuck and you're like, I am running on this wheel and nothing's moving, and I just feel like I'm a squirrel. I would love to talk with you and have a conversation of how do we put boundaries in place? How do we look at your calendar and make everything fit? And I believe at the end of the day, I'm actually going to be able to give you more time and you're going to make more money. So I would say if you're a solo agent wanting that, come seek me. And if you're a team lead on real estate and you are having a hard time managing your team, or there's just some people that you need to outsource accountability to me because you have to run in your superpower, I would love to talk with them and you to see what game plan we could get so that the others are running and getting the results you're wanting. So I have an Instagram page and you can email me directly from there at igcoach.life. And I'd be happy. There's a lead form there, so you can fill out some information. I have more curious questions about who you are and what your biggest pain point is, but I'd love to have a conversation and have a discovery call with you.
Yeah, and if you didn't get that Instagram name, I'm actually going to put it in the description of this video for you. Natalie's full of wisdom, and like I said, she's got a really great heart and care for teams and wants to help people win. And so if you are desiring to grow and take that next step, just reach out to her. Conversation is free. So
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
I had to look to you to make sure that was right. Yes, conversation's free, and so I think that there's going to be a lot of value in that. And once again, thanks so much for being here today. This has been the Joshua Bridwell Show. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Joshua.